I'm Laura Baldwin, 34 years old. And 3 weeks ago, at my father's 60th birthday celebration, he said something that made me decide to walk away from this family forever. Picture this. The grand ballroom at Riverside Manor, crystal chandeliers casting light across 250 guests in tailored suits and designer gowns, champagne towers glittering like promises. My father stood at the podium, silver hair perfectly styled, raising his glass to toast each member of our family one by one. When he got to me, he paused. That pause I'd felt my entire life, the one where he decided how little space I deserved in the room. "And this is my daughter, Laura," he announced, his voice carrying across the room with practiced ease. "The one who never finished college, never made anything of herself. Uneducated and worthless, but at least she showed up tonight." 250 people shifted uncomfortably. Some laughed nervously. A few looked away. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I simply set down my untouched champagne, stood up in my emerald green blazer, the one that cost more than half the dresses in that room, and said clearly, calmly, "Thank you, Dad. That introduction will make what happens Monday morning so much easier." Then I walked out. My heels clicked against marble in the sudden, absolute silence. What happened Monday morning? That's what I'm here to tell you. Before I continue, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to know how this story ends. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back 14 years to the day my father stole my future. The Baldwin family of Manhattan's Upper East Side. That's how we were known. Old money meeting new ambition. My father, William Baldwin, was the founder of Baldwin Properties, a real estate development firm that had reshaped half of Lower Manhattan's skyline. We had a penthouse overlooking Central Park, a summer home in the Hamptons, and invitations to every gala that mattered. From the outside, we were American royalty. My mother died when I was 7. A car accident on a rainy Tuesday, sudden and senseless. I barely remember her voice without replaying old home videos, but I remember her smell, lavender and something sweet, like vanilla. I remember how she'd braid my hair every morning and tell me I was going to change the world. 3 years later, my father remarried Patricia. She came with a son from her previous marriage, Derek, 5 years older than me and already at Yale. Within 6 months, they weren't just part of the family. They were the family. I became background noise. Not in any dramatic, Cinderella way. No one locked me in an attic or made me scrub floors. It was subtler than that. Derek's accomplishments were announced at dinner parties. Mine were met with, "That's nice, dear." Derek got the corner office internship at 19. I got vague promises about "when you're ready." Derek was being groomed to take over Baldwin Properties. I was just there. My father never yelled at me, never raised a hand. He just looked past me, like I was a piece of furniture he'd stopped noticing years ago. But there was one person who saw me clearly. My mother's younger sister, Aunt Caroline. She'd call me every other week from Boston, ask about my classes, my dreams, my plans. She'd say things like, "You have your mother's mind, Laura. Don't let anyone tell you you're not brilliant." She left me something when my mother died. Something tucked away in a trust one didn't even know existed. Something that would change everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In this family, I learned to be invisible. What I didn't know then was that invisibility would become my superpower. The day my future was decided for me, I was 20 years old. Sophomore at Columbia, double major in business and economics, 3.9 GPA. I had a scholarship application on my desk for a summer program at LSE in London. I had internship offers. I had plans. My father called me home on a Sunday. "Family dinner," he said. "Important discussion." Those words had never meant anything good. I found them in the formal dining room. My father at the head of the mahogany table, Patricia to his right, Derek across from her looking smug in a way that made my stomach turn. The table was set for 4, but there were only 3 folders laid out. I wasn't getting one. Sit down, Laura, my father said, not looking up from his scotch. I sat. Patricia folded her hands, her diamond rings catching the light. We need to discuss the family's financial situation. The family's financial situation. As if I'd ever been consulted on family finances before. As if I'd ever been considered part of the family in any decision that mattered. My father finally met my eyes. Derek's been accepted to Harvard Law. Full tuition, 3 years. It's a significant investment, but it's the right move for the future of Baldwin Properties. I waited. There had to be more. Your college fund, he continued, and my blood went cold. The money your mother's life insurance policy provided, we're going to redirect it to cover Derek's expenses. You can finish your degree at a state school, get a job. Plenty of people do it. The room tilted. That's my mother's money, I said quietly. She left that for my education. Patricia spoke up, her voice syrupy with false sympathy. Laura, you have to understand. Derek is going to run this company someday. Your father needs to invest in the future. You're a smart girl, you'll figure something out. Derek didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. My father signed a paper, slid it across the table. This isn't a discussion, Laura. The decision's been made. You're not Harvard material anyway, sweetheart. This is for the best. I stared at that signature. At the man who was supposed to protect me, who was supposed to honor my mother's memory, who had just erased me from the family ledger with a single stroke of his pen. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in front of them. I just stood up, walked out of that dining room, and started planning. What my father didn't know, what none of them knew, was that being underestimated would become my greatest advantage. And 14 years later, in that boardroom at Apex Strategic Solutions, I would show them exactly what not Harvard material could build. But first, I had to become invisible. I walked into that dining room at 6:47 p.m. on a Sunday in March 2010, still wearing my Columbia sweatshirt, my backpack heavy with textbooks I'd been studying all weekend. I thought it was just another family dinner. The kind where I'd sit quietly, push food around my plate, and disappear back to my dorm by 9. The table was set with the fine china. That should have been my first warning. My father sat at the head like always, Patricia to his right in pearls and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my textbooks. Derek lounged across from her, fresh off his Yale graduation, looking like he'd already won something I hadn't been invited to compete for. There were 3 leather portfolios on the table. None in front of my usual seat. Sit down, Laura, my father said, not looking up from his scotch. I sat. Patricia folded her manicured hands, diamond rings catching the chandelier light. We need to discuss the family's financial priorities. Financial priorities. I'd never been consulted on family finances before. I'd never been considered part of the family in any decision that actually mattered. My father swirled his drink, ice clinking against crystal. Derek's been accepted to Harvard Law. It's a significant investment, but it's the right move for Baldwin Properties' future. I waited for the but. For the other shoe to drop. Your college fund, he said, finally meeting my eyes with that look I knew too well, the one that said this conversation was a courtesy, not a negotiation. The money from your mother's life insurance policy. We're redirecting it to cover Derek's tuition. You can transfer to a state school, get a job. Plenty of people work their way through college. The words hit like ice water. That's Mom's money. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. She left that for my education. Patricia's smile was sympathetic in the way that made me want to scream. Laura, sweetheart, you have to understand. Derek is going to run this company someday. Your father needs to invest wisely. You're a smart girl, you'll land on your feet. Derek said nothing. Just sat there, entitled and silent. My father slid a document across the mahogany, his signature already drying at the bottom. This isn't a discussion. The decision's made. He took another sip of scotch. You're not Harvard material anyway, sweetheart. This is for the best. I stared at that signature. At the man who'd promised my dying mother he'd take care of me. At the family who'd just erased me from their future with a pen stroke and a lie. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of them. I stood up, pushed my chair back with surgical precision, and walked out. They thought they'd taken everything. They had no idea they'd just set me free. I left Columbia 3 weeks later. Didn't make a scene, didn't beg. Just withdrew, packed my dorm room into 6 boxes, and bought a one-way bus ticket to Chicago. Why Chicago? Because it was far enough that my father couldn't show up unannounced, big enough that I could disappear, and cheap enough that I could survive on whatever job I could find. My entire life fit into the trunk of a cab. The apartment I found was a 400-square-foot studio in Wicker Park, 3rd floor walk-up, window facing a brick wall. The landlord called it cozy. I called it what I could afford, $6.50 a month, utilities included. The previous tenant had left a futon with springs that poked through the mattress, a wobbly kitchen table, and a bathroom where the shower only had 2 temperatures, scalding or frozen. I bought sheets from Goodwill. A lamp from a yard sale. Plates from the dollar store. This was my Harvard. I found work within a week. Keller & Associates, a boutique management consulting firm tucked into a renovated warehouse in the West Loop. They needed an administrative assistant, someone to answer phones, manage calendars, organize files, make coffee for client meetings. The pay was $32,000 a year. I took it before they finished explaining the benefits. My boss was a woman named Diana Keller, mid-40s, sharp as a knife and twice as elegant. She'd built the firm from nothing 15 years earlier, and you could see it in everything, the way she negotiated, the way she commanded a room, the way she never apologized for taking up space. "You're overqualified for this job," she said during my interview, looking at my partial Columbia transcript. "I need this job," I replied. She hired me on the spot. The work was mind-numbing at first. I answered phones with the same script 40 times a day. I proofread PowerPoint decks at 11 p.m. because a client moved up their meeting. I learned how everyone took their coffee: Diana, black with 1 sugar, Marcus Chen, the senior partner, oat milk latte, Jennifer Ortiz, green tea, no exceptions. But I also learned how to read a room. I learned that consulting wasn't about having all the answers, it was about asking the right questions. I learned that clients didn't pay for solutions they could find on Google, they paid for someone to see the problem they couldn't name. I learned that the best consultants didn't talk the most in meetings. They listened, took notes, and spoke last with precision. I learned by being invisible. I'd sit in the back of conference rooms, taking minutes while Diana dissected a client's supply chain inefficiencies or Jennifer rebuilt an entire org chart on a whiteboard. I'd stay late, reading the old case files, studying the proposals that won contracts and the ones that didn't. I'd listen to Diana's phone calls through the thin walls, absorbing how she handled difficult clients, how she said no without burning bridges, how she turned a complaint into an upsell. Nobody taught me. I just watched, listened, and took notes in a spiral notebook I kept in my desk drawer. At night, I took classes at Harold Washington College, a community college downtown. Business fundamentals. Accounting. Statistics. Marketing strategy. The classes were crowded with people like me, people who'd had their plans derailed, people rebuilding from scratch, people who couldn't afford to fail because there was no safety net. I studied on the L train. In the laundromat while my clothes tumbled. At the diner on the corner where coffee refills were free and the waitress stopped asking if I wanted food after the 3rd week. My father called once. 2 months after I left. "Laura, this is ridiculous," he said, his voice tight with annoyance, not concern. "You're being dramatic. Come home, we'll figure out a state school for you." "I have figured it out," I said. "Where are you even living?" "Chicago." "Doing what?" "Working." There was a pause. I could hear Patricia murmuring something in the background. "You're going to waste your life out of spite?" he asked. "No, Dad," I said quietly. "I'm going to build one." I hung up. He didn't call back. The invitation stopped after that. Thanksgiving. Christmas. Derek's law school graduation. My father's annual summer party in the Hamptons. I wasn't disinvited, I just stopped being invited. Like I'd never existed at all. Patricia would tell people I was finding myself or taking time off. Derek, according to a cousin who still texted me occasionally, told people I'd dropped out and moved away. My father didn't mention me. I became a footnote. Then a silence. And in that silence, I grew. By year 2 at Keller and Associates, Diana started pulling me into client meetings. Not to talk, just to observe. "You notice things," she said once, after I'd quietly pointed out a discrepancy in a client's financial data that everyone else had missed. "That's valuable." By year 3, I was writing sections of proposals. Small sections at first, research summaries, competitive analyses. Then larger pieces. Then entire proposals under Diana's editorial eye. "You're wasted as an admin," Marcus told me one afternoon, dropping a file on my desk. "Have you thought about consulting?" I had thought about nothing else for 3 years. "I don't have the degree," I said. "You have the brain," he replied. "The degree is just paper." But I knew better. In this world, paper mattered. Credentials mattered. I needed both. So I kept going. I took the GMAT during my lunch breaks, studied in the bathroom stall when the office was too loud. I finished my associate's degree at Harold Washington, then transferred to DePaul's night program for my bachelor's. It took 4 years. 4 years of 6 a.m. mornings and midnight study sessions, of living on rice and beans and black coffee, of wearing the same 3 work outfits on rotation. Diana promoted me to junior consultant the week after I graduated. I was 26 years old. I'd been gone for 6 years. And I'd built something my family would never understand, not because they couldn't, but because they'd never bothered to look. I thought about calling my father that day. Telling him I'd done it. That I'd finished my degree without his money, without his name, without his permission. But I didn't. Because I'd learned something more valuable than any degree. I didn't need his approval to succeed. I just needed him to underestimate me a little longer. The call came on a Tuesday in October, 3 months after I'd been promoted to junior consultant. I was at my desk, halfway through a market analysis for a manufacturing client, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Boston area code. I almost didn't answer. "Laura Baldwin?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "This is Margaret Chen from Whitmore and Associates, estate attorneys. I'm calling on behalf of your aunt, Caroline Mitchum. My mother's sister. The one who'd called me every few weeks during college, who'd sent a card when I left New York, who'd been the only person to ask if I was okay instead of telling me what I should do. Is she all right?" My chest tightened. "Oh, she's fine," the attorney said quickly. "Actually, she's the one who asked me to contact you. There's a matter regarding your late mother's estate that requires your attention. Would you be available to meet this week?" I flew to Boston that Friday, using miles I'd been saving for an emergency. The law office was in Back Bay, all dark wood and leather chairs and the kind of quiet that cost money. Aunt Caroline was already there when I arrived, sitting in the waiting room in a navy blazer, her hair the same honey blonde as mine but threaded with silver. She stood when she saw me, and for a moment we just looked at each other. Then she pulled me into a hug that smelled like bergamot and made my throat tight. "You look so much like her," she whispered. "God, Laura. You look exactly like Sarah." We sat in the conference room, me, Aunt Caroline, and Margaret Chen, who laid out a folder of documents with the reverence of someone handling something sacred. "Your mother," Margaret began, "established a trust fund 3 months before she died. She funded it with money from her own inheritance, her grandmother's estate. The trust was set up with very specific instructions. It was to remain untouched until you turned 25, at which point full control would transfer to you. I stared at the papers. I turned 26 in July. I know, Aunt Caroline said softly. I've been trying to find you for over a year. Your father said he didn't know where you were. Said you'd cut off contact with the family. Of course he did. Margaret slid a document across the table. The trust currently holds $150,000. Your mother's instructions were very clear. This money is for your education, your future, whatever you choose to build. Not your father. Not anyone else. You. My hand shook as I picked up the paper. My mother's signature at the bottom, dated 2 weeks before the accident. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchum Baldwin, in the careful handwriting I remembered from birthday cards and lunchbox notes. She knew, I said, my voice breaking. She knew he'd try to take it. Aunt Caroline's eyes were red. Your mother was many things, but she wasn't naive. She'd watched your father operate in business for years. She knew how he thought, how he controlled things. So she set this up through her family, not his. She made me the trustee, not him. She protected you the only way she could. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. There's more, Margaret said gently, sliding another paper forward. Your mother left you a letter. It's been sealed with the trust documents for 17 years. The envelope was cream-colored, my name written across the front in my mother's hand. My fingers trembled as I opened it. My darling Laura. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry I won't be there to see the woman you become. But I know who you are, even at 7 years old. You're brilliant. You're stubborn. You're kind in a world that will try to harden you. Your father is a good man in many ways, but he sees the world as a balance sheet. He'll try to make you into what he thinks you should be instead of celebrating who you are. Don't let him. This money is yours. Not for him to control, not for him to redirect to whatever he thinks is more important. Yours. Use it for your education. Use it to build something. Use it to be free. I wish I could be there to see it. But I'll be watching, sweetheart. I'll always be watching. Be brave. Be brilliant. Be exactly who you are. All my love. Mom. I read it 3 times while Aunt Caroline held my hand and Margaret Chen pretended to organize papers to give me privacy. When I finally looked up, my cheeks were wet, but I wasn't sad. I was furious. He told me the life insurance money was mine, I said, my voice steady despite the tears. He told me it was for my education, that Mom had wanted me to go to the best school. Then he gave it to Derek and told me I wasn't worth the investment. Aunt Caroline's jaw tightened. That sounds exactly like William. He lied. For 14 years, he lied. Yes, she said simply. And now you know the truth. I looked down at the trust documents. $150,000. Not enough to go back and finish at Columbia. Not enough to erase the 6 years I'd spent rebuilding from nothing. But enough to build something new. I'd spent 6 years learning consulting from the inside. I'd watched Diana build a firm, manage clients, hire talent, navigate crises. I'd written proposals, run analyses, managed projects. I'd seen what worked and what didn't, what clients actually needed versus what they said they needed. I'd been preparing without knowing I was preparing. What are you thinking? Aunt Caroline asked, watching my face. I looked at my mother's letter again. Use it to build something. Use it to be free. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that I'm going to start my own consulting firm. Margaret Chen raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. Good, I replied. My mother didn't save this money for me to play it safe. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. By the time I flew back to Chicago on Sunday night, I'd already started making lists. What I'd need. Who I'd call. How I'd structure it. I'd registered the LLC online from Aunt Caroline's kitchen table, Apex Strategic Solutions. I gave Diana my notice the following Monday. She looked at me across her desk, at the resignation letter I'd spent all night writing, and smiled. I was wondering when you'd do this. You knew? Laura, I've watched you for 6 years. You're not built to work for someone else. You're built to build. She stood, extended her hand. Go. And when you need your first subcontractor, call me. I walked out of that office for the last time with my box of belongings, my mother's letter folded in my pocket, and a business plan taking shape in my mind. My father had stolen my college fund and told me I wasn't worth the investment. My mother had left me something better, the means to prove him catastrophically wrong. I launched Apex Strategic Solutions from my studio apartment in November 2016. No fancy office, no staff, no investors who could tell me what to build. Just me, a laptop, my mother's trust fund and a business account, and 6 years of knowledge I'd absorbed like a sponge. The first 3 months were terrifying. I built a website on a template that cost $200. I cold called every contact I'd made at Keller and Associates who wasn't directly competing with Diana. I sent proposals to small businesses that couldn't afford the big consulting firms but desperately needed help, a family-owned restaurant chain hemorrhaging money, a manufacturing company whose inventory system was stuck in 1987, a tech startup that had grown too fast and couldn't manage the chaos. I kept my rates low. Not because I wasn't worth more, but because I needed case studies more than I needed money. I needed proof. My first client was a boutique hotel in Evanston that was 3 months from bankruptcy. The owner, Martha, was 62 years old and had poured her retirement into the property. She hired me for $5,000, half up front, half on completion, to figure out why she was failing. I spent 2 weeks living in their data. Revenue streams, occupancy rates, competitor pricing, customer reviews, staff schedules. I interviewed every employee, analyzed every expense, mapped every process. The problem wasn't one thing. It was 20 small things creating compound failure. I rebuilt their booking system. Restructured their staffing model. Redesigned their pricing strategy. Created a local partnership program with wedding planners and corporate clients they'd been ignoring. 6 months later, Martha called me crying. They'd had their first profitable quarter in 3 years. She referred me to 4 other businesses. That's how it grew. Not through advertising or networking events, but through results. One client would tell another. A struggling nonprofit would hear about the restaurant chain I'd saved. A mid-size manufacturer would call because their competitor had used me to cut costs by 30% without cutting staff. I was deliberate about staying invisible. I never used the Baldwin name in any marketing. My LLC was registered under my mother's maiden name, Apex Strategic Solutions, LLC, founded by L. Mitchum. My website didn't have my photo. My proposals didn't have my biography. Clients knew me as Laura, the consultant who delivered results, not Laura Baldwin, daughter of William Baldwin of Baldwin Properties. I didn't want his name opening doors. And I definitely didn't want him knowing what I was building. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Jasmine, a brilliant analyst fresh out of Northwestern who was tired of being overlooked at corporate firms. By year 3, we'd moved into a small office in the Loop, just 2 rooms and a conference space, but it was ours. I kept my expenses lean. No mahogany desks or leather chairs. No country club memberships or expensive client dinners unless they served a purpose. Every dollar went back into the business, better software, better talent, better training. I learned to trust my instincts. If a potential client treated me dismissively in the first meeting, I walked away. If they wanted quick fixes instead of real solutions, I referred them elsewhere. I built Apex on a foundation of integrity and results, not ego and promises. The work was grueling. 18-hour days were normal. I missed birthdays, holidays, sleep. But every new client felt like proof. Every success story felt like vindication. I was building something that mattered. And I was doing it completely on my own terms, in the shadows, where no one from my old life could see me coming. Not yet. The email came through our general inquiry form on a Wednesday in March 2018. Standard format, corporate address, the kind of lead Jasmine would normally qualify before bringing to me. But this one, she brought to me immediately. "You need to see this," she said, setting her laptop on my desk. The sender, Patricia Baldwin, Director of Operations, Baldwin Properties. I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the email like it might change if I blinked hard enough. Dear Apex Strategic Solutions. We've been referred to your firm by Morrison Manufacturing regarding operational consulting services. Baldwin Properties is experiencing efficiency challenges in our project management division and vendor coordination systems. We're looking for a firm that can conduct a comprehensive operational audit and provide actionable recommendations. Please advise on your availability and rate structure. Best regards. Patricia Baldwin. My stepmother. The woman who'd sat at that mahogany table 8 years ago and told me I was a smart girl who'd figure it out while they gave my future to her son. She was asking for my help. And she had no idea. Jasmine watched my face carefully. What do you want to do? I should have said no. Should have deleted the email, blocked the domain, moved on. This was a complication I didn't need, a risk I shouldn't take. But I didn't say no. Set up a discovery call, I said. Standard process. Don't mention my name yet. The call happened 2 days later. Patricia, her assistant, and their CFO on one end. Me, Jasmine, and Marcus, my senior consultant who I'd hired away from a Big Four firm 6 months earlier, on the other. Patricia's voice was exactly as I remembered. Polished, professional, with that undertone of condescension she probably didn't even know she carried. We're dealing with serious inefficiencies, she explained. Projects running over budget, vendor conflicts, communication breakdowns between our development teams and operations. We need someone who can come in with fresh eyes and fix this before it impacts our bottom line. I kept my camera off. Voice only, I'd told Jasmine to write in the meeting invite. I'm reviewing documents during calls. A reasonable request that no one questioned. I listened as Patricia described the problems I could diagnose in my sleep because I'd seen them 100 times before. Baldwin Properties had grown too fast without updating their systems. They were running a $200 million operation with processes designed for a $50 million company. What's your timeline? I asked, my voice steady and professional. Ideally, we'd like to start within the month, Patricia said. This is somewhat urgent. And your budget? She named a figure that made Jasmine's eyebrows rise. It was triple our usual rate for this scope. They were desperate. We can start in 2 weeks, I said. I'll send over the proposal by Monday. After the call ended, Marcus looked at me. That's Baldwin Properties. As in William Baldwin. As in? Yes, I said. And you're going to take it? I thought about my father's voice saying you're not Harvard material. Thought about Derek smirking across that dinner table. Thought about 8 years of being erased from family gatherings like I'd never existed. Yes, I said. We're going to take it. The proposal went out that Monday. Professional, comprehensive, exactly what they needed. I signed it as L. Mitchum, Principal Consultant, Apex Strategic Solutions. Patricia accepted it within 24 hours. For the next 6 weeks, I embedded myself in Baldwin Properties operations like a surgical team in an operating room. I worked primarily through Marcus and Jasmine, conducting interviews, analyzing workflows, mapping processes. When I had to attend meetings, I kept my camera off, citing bandwidth issues that no one questioned because everyone's internet was terrible. The problems were exactly what I'd suspected. Their project management software was outdated. Their vendor approval process had 17 unnecessary steps. Their communication structure meant decisions that should take hours were taking weeks. I rebuilt everything. New project management system. streamlined vendor protocols, restructured team hierarchy, automated reporting that gave leadership real-time visibility instead of month-old data. The results were immediate. Projects that had been stalled for months suddenly moved forward. Costs dropped. Efficiency metrics that had been declining for 2 years reversed course. Patricia sent a glowing email, "Your team has been exceptional. We'd like to discuss a long-term consulting relationship." That's how it started. One project became a retainer. A retainer became a strategic partnership. Within a year, Apex Strategic Solutions was handling 40% of Baldwin Properties' operational strategy. Within 2 years, that number hit 65%. I became the invisible architecture of my father's success. And the truly beautiful irony? Every quarterly board meeting where my father presented improved efficiency metrics, every investor call where he bragged about operational excellence, every industry award Baldwin Properties won for innovation, it was my work. My strategies. My solutions. He just didn't know it. I heard about the family dinners through my cousin Emily, the only family member who still texted me occasionally. She'd send updates I never asked for but secretly appreciated. Derek made partner at his firm. Your dad threw him a party at the house. Patricia redecorated the penthouse. It's very beige. Your dad asked if anyone had heard from you. Nobody said anything. Then, about 2 years into the Apex Baldwin partnership. Family dinner last night. Your dad was complaining about how you wasted your potential and threw away every opportunity he gave you. Derek agreed. It was uncomfortable. I read that text sitting in my office, the real office now, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River, my name on the door, and I smiled. While my father sat in his penthouse complaining about his disappointing daughter, that disappointing daughter was literally keeping his company afloat. The consulting fees from Baldwin Properties alone had allowed me to hire 8 more employees. To expand our client roster to 47 companies across 6 industries. To move Apex into the top tier of boutique consulting firms in the Midwest. I was building an empire in the shadows of his empire. And he had absolutely no idea. But he would. Eventually, he would. I just had to wait for the right moment. The invitation arrived on a Thursday in late September, heavy cardstock in a cream envelope with my name written in calligraphy. Laura Baldwin. Not even my +1 designation, just my name, alone, like an afterthought. You are cordially invited to celebrate William Baldwin's 60th birthday. Saturday, October 14, 2024. Riverside Manor. 7 p.m. cocktail attire. I held it in my hands for a long time, studying the embossed gold lettering, the formal wording that somehow made a family event feel like a corporate function. This was the first invitation I'd received in 3 years. The first acknowledgement that I still existed in their world. Emily texted me an hour later, "Did you get the invitation? Please come. It's so weird that you're never at these things." Jasmine found me still holding it when she came in for our afternoon strategy meeting. "What's that?" she asked. "An invitation to my father's birthday party." She knew enough about my history to raise her eyebrows. "Are you going?" I thought about it. Thought about the girl who'd walked out of that dining room 14 years ago with nothing. Thought about the woman I'd become, CEO of a firm that had just been profiled in Chicago Business Journal, owner of a company that had revenue last year exceeding $8 million, the strategic mind behind half of Baldwin Properties' recent success. Thought about my father, who still had no idea who I was or what I'd built. "Yes," I said finally. "I think I am." "Why?" Jasmine asked carefully. I looked at her. "Because I want to see his face when he realizes." I didn't plan to make a scene. Didn't plan to announce anything. I just wanted to show up as myself, the real version, not the failure they'd written me off as. I wanted them to see me, actually see me, and know that their dismissal had been the catalyst for everything I'd become. And then I wanted to walk away for good. I spent more time getting ready for that party than I'd spent on anything personal in years. I made an appointment at a salon I'd walked past 100 times but never entered. They swept my honey blonde hair into a low, elegant bun that made me look older, more sophisticated. My makeup was subtle but expensive, the kind that looks natural but costs 3 figures. The emerald green blazer I'd bought for a client pitch 6 months earlier, the one that had cost more than my first month's rent in that Wicker Park studio. A simple black silk shell underneath. Tailored black pants. The diamond earrings Aunt Caroline had given me on my 30th birthday, my mother's earrings, actually, the ones my father had claimed were lost after she died. And the watch. A Cartier tank that I'd bought myself last year after Apex hit 7 figures in revenue. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted a reminder on my wrist every day that I'd built something real. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Polished. Powerful. Put together in a way that screamed success without saying a word. I looked like I belonged in their world. Except I'd built my own world. This was just a guest appearance. The Uber dropped me off at Riverside Manor at 7:43 p.m. Late enough to miss the receiving line, early enough that the party was in full swing. The venue was exactly what I'd expected: soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, cream and gold everywhere, the kind of elegant excess that my father considered tasteful. I recognized faces immediately. Business partners. Society figures. The same crowd that had always orbited my father's success like planets around a sun. No one recognized me. I'd been gone for 14 years. The last time most of these people had seen me, I was a college dropout slinking away in shame. Now I was a woman in a $2,000 blazer holding a champagne flute like it was a shield. I found a spot near the back of the ballroom, close enough to observe but far enough to avoid immediate interaction. I watched my father work the room, silver hair perfectly styled, custom navy suit, that politician smile he'd perfected over decades of closing deals. Patricia was beside him in rose gold and diamonds, playing the role of devoted wife flawlessly. Derek stood nearby with a woman I didn't recognize, probably his latest girlfriend, looking smug in the way that only golden children who'd never been told no could manage. Emily spotted me first. She made her way through the crowd, eyes wide. "Laura? Oh my God, you came. You look, wow. You look amazing." "Thanks, Em." I hugged her, genuinely glad to see at least one friendly face. "Does he know you're here?" "Not yet." She bit her lip. "Laura, I should probably warn you." But before she could finish, a microphone crackled to life. My father stepped up to the small stage at the front of the ballroom, champagne flute in hand, ready to give his speech. This was it. I straightened my blazer, took a breath, and let whatever was about to happen unfold. Emily squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you're here," she whispered. I wasn't sure if I was glad. But I was ready. My father's voice boomed through the speakers, warm and commanding. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate with me. 60 years is a milestone, and I'm fortunate to have built a life surrounded by success, family, and the people who matter most." He began introducing family members. Patricia, my brilliant wife and partner. Derek, my son, who makes me proud every day, just made partner at Morrison & Chase. His sister. His brother. His business partners. Then he paused, scanned the room, and his eyes landed on me. I watched recognition dawn. Confusion. Then something else I couldn't quite read. "And this," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes anymore, "is my daughter Laura." The room turned to look at me. I raised my champagne glass slightly, my expression neutral, waiting. "The one who never finished college," he continued, and I felt Emily stiffen beside me. "Never made anything of herself. Uneducated and worthless, but at least she showed up tonight." A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the crowd. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Just smiled that same calm smile I'd perfected in 1,000 difficult client meetings. Then I set down my champagne glass on the nearest table with deliberate precision, the crystal making a soft clink that somehow cut through the murmur of the crowd. I looked directly at my father, and in a voice that carried across the silent ballroom, said, "Thank you, Dad. That introduction will make what happens Monday morning so much easier." Then I turned and walked toward the exit, my heels clicking against marble, my head high. Behind me, the silence was absolute. I didn't look back. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset or doubting myself, but because I was working. I sat at my dining room table with my laptop, a pot of coffee, and 14 years of quiet rage channeled into the most professionally devastating documents I'd ever written. The first was the formal contract termination notice. Standard legal language, airtight and professional. Apex Strategic Solutions was exercising its right to terminate the consulting agreement with Baldwin Properties effective in 30 days, as stipulated in Section 12.3 of their contract. All ongoing projects would be transitioned appropriately. All proprietary systems and processes would be documented for handoff. All outstanding invoices would be settled per the agreed terms. Cold. Clean. Unassailable. The second document was anything but standard. I wrote it in the same voice I'd used to explain to a client why their business was failing, direct, factual, and completely honest. But this time, the client was my father, and the failure was personal. "William. Saturday night, you introduced me to 250 people as uneducated and worthless. You believed that about me for 14 years, probably longer. I think it's time you learned what I'm actually worth, and what it costs when you lose me. The consulting firm you've been working with for the past 5 years, Apex Strategic Solutions, is mine. I founded it. I built it. Every operational improvement you've bragged about in board meetings, every efficiency gain you've presented to investors, every strategic recommendation that saved you millions, that was me. When your project management systems were failing in 2018, I fixed them. When your vendor relationships were hemorrhaging money, I restructured them. When your teams couldn't communicate and projects were stalling, I built new processes that actually worked. I've been the invisible architecture holding your company together while you sat at family dinners complaining about your disappointing daughter. The irony is almost poetic. You took my college fund, my mother's money, and told me I wasn't worth investing in. So I invested in myself. I built something you never thought I could, and I did it so well that you hired me without even knowing it. I don't expect you to apologize. I don't expect you to suddenly realize you were wrong about me. I just expect you to understand that when you called me worthless in front of your entire social circle, you were describing yourself, not me. This is my formal notice. Apex Strategic Solutions will no longer be working with Baldwin Properties. Our contract ends in 30 days. After that, you're on your own. I hope you figure it out. But honestly, I don't really care if you do. Laura. I read it 7 times, changing words, sharpening phrases, removing anything that sounded like I was asking for his approval or validation. This wasn't about convincing him I was worth something. This was about stating facts. By Sunday morning, both documents were perfect. I scheduled them to send Monday at 9 a.m., early enough to land before he got to his office, late enough that Patricia would already be at her desk to see it hit her inbox. Then I called an emergency Monday morning meeting with my team. They arrived at 8, looking concerned. Jasmine, Marcus, and the 6 other consultants who'd become the core of Apex over the past few years. They'd all worked on the Baldwin Properties account at some point. They all knew what it meant to our revenue. "We're terminating the Baldwin Properties contract," I said without preamble. "Effective in 30 days. I'm telling you now because you deserve to know before it becomes chaos." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "That's 40% of our revenue." "I know. Can I ask why?" I looked at the team I'd built, people who'd trusted me, who'd chosen to work for a small firm instead of corporate giants because they believed in what we were doing. "Because the client is my father," I said quietly. "And he doesn't know I own this company." Saturday night, at his birthday party, he publicly called me uneducated and worthless in front of 250 people. This morning, he's going to learn exactly who's been keeping his company functional for 5 years. The silence was heavy. Jasmine spoke first. Holy shit. Yeah, I said. So this is personal, Marcus said carefully. This is professional, I corrected. We don't work for clients who treat me, with contempt. If he'd done this to any of you, I'd have terminated the contract immediately. I'm not making an exception just because he's family. What about the revenue gap? One of the junior consultants asked. We'll manage it, I said. We have 18 other active clients and a pipeline of prospects. We'll tighten our belts for a quarter or two, but we'll be fine. I built this company from nothing once. I can do it again. We can do it again, Jasmine corrected. I looked at her, grateful. Do we need to worry about retaliation? Marcus asked. Legal action, reputation damage? No. The contract is airtight. We have 30 days to transition everything professionally. And honestly? I smiled, cold and certain. His company needs us a lot more than we need them. He can't afford a legal battle that would expose how dependent he's been on outside consulting. At 9 a.m. exactly, I watched the email sent from my office. The formal termination to Patricia's business email. The personal letter to my father's private email, the one he'd given me when I was 16 and never changed. Then I waited. The call came at 9:47 a.m. Patricia's number on my business line. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Apex Strategic Solutions, this is Laura Mitchum. Ms. Mitchum, this is Patricia Baldwin from Baldwin Properties. I just received your termination notice, and I think there's been some kind of mistake. There's no mistake, Mrs. Baldwin. But we have ongoing projects, strategic initiatives that are halfway implemented. Which is why we're providing 30 days notice instead of terminating immediately, I said calmly. We'll document everything, transition all processes, and ensure your team has what they need to continue independently. This is unacceptable. We have a partnership. We have a contract, I corrected. Which includes termination clauses that both parties agreed to. We're exercising those clauses. It's all legal and above board. I need to speak with your supervisor. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. I'm the CEO, Mrs. Baldwin. There is no one above me. She hung up. The second call came at 10:23 a.m. My father's number. The one I deleted from my phone years ago but still recognized. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 10:31. Again at 10:45. Then at 11:02. I didn't answer any of them. At 11:30, my business email pinged with a message from William Baldwin's executive account. We need to talk. This is not how business is conducted. I typed back. You're right. Business is conducted with respect and professionalism. You introduced me as worthless at your birthday party. I'm simply adjusting our business relationship accordingly. All communication regarding the transition should go through my COO, Jasmine Torres. Her contact information is in the termination notice. L. Mitchum, CEO, Apex Strategic Solutions. I hit send and closed my laptop. Jasmine appeared in my doorway. You okay? I'm perfect, I said. And for the first time in 14 years, I actually meant it. They showed up on Wednesday afternoon, unannounced. My receptionist called my extension, voice uncertain. There are 3 people here demanding to see you. William Baldwin, Patricia Baldwin, and Derek Baldwin. They don't have an appointment. Send them to conference room A, I said. Tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes. I took 15. I brought Marcus and our corporate attorney, Jennifer Chen. When I walked into the conference room, my father was pacing, Patricia sat rigid in her chair, and Derek leaned against the wall trying to look casual and failing. Hello, Dad, I said, taking the seat at the head of the table. Patricia. Derek. My father turned, his face red. What the hell do you think you're doing? Having a meeting in my conference room, I said calmly. Please, sit down. You can't just destroy our company because you're holding some childish grudge. I'm not destroying anything. I'm terminating a consulting contract per its legal terms. Jennifer, can you confirm? Jennifer slid copies of the contract across the table. All termination procedures are being followed precisely as outlined in Section 12.3. 30 days notice, full documentation, professional transition support. Patricia's voice was tight. You lied to us. You never disclosed that you owned this firm. I never lied, I interrupted. You hired Apex Strategic Solutions. That's exactly what you got. My personal identity was never required disclosure under our contract. Jennifer? Correct, Jennifer confirmed. Derek finally spoke. This is insane. You're sabotaging Dad's company out of spite. I'm exercising my right to choose my clients, I said, looking at him directly. Something I learned the hard way, you don't have to work with people who don't respect you. My father slammed his hand on the table. I gave you everything. You gave me nothing, I said, my voice still calm, still level. You took my college fund and gave it to Derek. You erased me from this family. You called me worthless in front of 250 people. Those are facts, not feelings. That money was needed. That money was mine. My mother's life insurance, designated for my education. You stole it. The room went silent. I opened a folder, slid documents across the table. This is the trust fund my mother actually left me, the one you told Aunt Caroline didn't exist. This is her letter, explaining she set it up because she knew you'd try to control my future. These are the receipts. My father stared at the papers, his face pale. You've spent 14 years believing I was a failure, I continued. But I built this company from nothing. The same company that saved yours. And now I'm walking away, because that's what people with options do when they're treated poorly. I stood. The transition will be complete in 27 days. After that, you'll need to figure things out yourselves. This meeting is over. I walked out of my own conference room, leaving them sitting in silence. I didn't look back. Aunt Caroline called me 2 weeks after the confrontation. There's something else you need to know about your mother's money. We met at her house in Boston. She handed me bank statements, medical bills, insurance documents. My hands shook as I read them. Your mother saved $75,000 for your education before she died, Caroline said quietly. Separate from the trust. Your father told everyone it went to medical bills. But her treatment was covered by insurance. He took it, Laura. He just took it. I stared at the proof. My father hadn't just stolen my future once, he'd stolen from my dying mother. I've been chasing his approval for 14 years, I whispered. I know, Caroline said. But you don't need it anymore. She was right. I stopped chasing. Stopped hoping he'd see me. I built my life around the people who already did, Aunt Caroline, my team at Apex, the community I'd created. 3 months later, Apex signed its largest contract yet. Not because of my father's name, but because of mine. I was finally, truly free.